Welcome back to another episode of Your Daily Real Estate. And I almost have my cough done. Almost, but not there yet. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. This episode is brought to you by yourbrillianttribe.com. Check us out. Not only do we do group coaching, but we also build out custom ads, Facebook, Google PPC, building out communities, social media, whatever you need. Let's talk about something that I don't know that I've ever had anyone talk about. And if you've heard this before, I'd like to know. Because I was sitting there reading a couple of different books, and I thought, wow, this really applies to real estate. And it's how we approach the customer, seller, buyer, doesn't matter who they are. It's how our brains have two parts at work. And it's really in creating these relationships with our clients. So here it is. I'm going to read part of this to you. If you do need this, of course, I have a Google Doc. Let me know. I'll send this over to you. The feeling brain is what I'm going to call the first brain for this one. We're going to go with two parts, right? Two parts, two brains. The feeling brain. This is what scientists call, you may have heard this, the limbic system. It's like your quick reaction control center. And the thinking brain is the second part. And I'm going to tell you here what it's called officially, prefrontal cortex. You've heard of that one. Everyone's heard of that one. It's your calm side. It's your planning center. It's the one that keeps you centered. It's the one that a lot of us wish we could tap into a lot more, right, as we're reacting to everything. Now, when people get stressed, here's what happens. People get stressed about buying and selling. That's where their feeling brain comes up. That's where you see the limbic system start popping up. And that takes over. And a lot of the times when we're in the middle of a transaction with our customer, with our clients, the problem is that this is how most of the conversations are being run. They're run by the limbic system. And the part that I want to focus on is 4 parts. I want to remind you of these 3 things because I've been running this for about 20 years, not knowing for part of that time that I was approaching this in a way that I would bring people in to be the calmness in the transaction so they could rely on me saying, hey, look, this is the situation. Let's come over here with me and I'll go through this whole process. Because here's what we sometimes forget. The client, this is their first time or maybe second time purchasing or selling a home in a very long time. They're not used to this world. And they're relying on us, they're relying on our professionalism to make sure that everything is going right. And more importantly, this is the harder part for some of us, more importantly, that we're showing up in a calm, confident, professional manner. And so when I was reading this, I thought, man, the feeling brain and the thinking brain. It'd be nice if most of us were on the thinking brain all the time. Most of the time, it's good to feel here and there, right? But the challenge is the thinking brain takes over. And I put here, it's like when you're really excited or scared, it's harder to think clearly. And that's where you step in. Here's how you help your clients. Number 1, make them feel safe. It is our job to make them feel safe. It's our job to use a calm and friendly voice. And unfortunately, I've also seen the opposite. You may have too. And sometimes that falls on us from other agents when they're yelling at us or saying, oh my gosh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Listen, read this, read that. Or they're all over the place and it feels very disastrous. Now, here, when you're talking to your clients, you've got to show that you're listening. You've got to show that you're listening by going along and doing the things that they would think you should be doing when you're listening, nodding your head, saying things like, listen, I hear you. Or, yeah, that makes sense. Remind them that you're on their team because that's what they need when they're on their feeling brain. And the piece that sometimes I even forget about is that they need space. Like after we talk and we're going through this and I say, Joanne, listen, take some time, think this through. Let me know what you think tomorrow. Let's reconnect in the morning and go through this. Sometimes that is needed, but it's on how you phrase it, right? Because your job is to remain in the thinking brain for the most part in this. And some clients, like one of my clients before, they at some point during the transaction, they're like, Tristan, it feels like you have no emotion on this. You're not invested with us. And I had to step back and say, I'm just going to call him Joanne, I am invested in you, but it's my job, because you hired me, to make sure that everything is running well. And I can take a look at either the opportunities for you or the things that we really need to be paying attention to. And because I do this routinely, I'm a lot more used to all of these things happening. So inside, I'm like, oh man, that doesn't look good. But outside, I need to make sure that you have confidence in me in everything that we're doing, so that you know we're heading in the right direction. And if I'm as emotional as some people that you see, I didn't say as emotional as you, as some people that you see out there, or like the other side, it's not going to benefit you, and it's not going to benefit this whole picture. And then she said, I understand. So give them space when they need it. Have them think this through. Number one, make them feel safe. Number two, I have here, help them feel in control. Because in essence, that's why people typically get emotional. They feel like they're losing control. And when you give them control back, here's what I wrote here. It says, break big tasks into smaller, easier steps. One of the bigger challenges in our business is when somebody just gets under contract, goes under escrow, we send them a whole bunch of paperwork, and it can be very overwhelming for them. And so this is where you have to slowly, incrementally send it to them. And if you can't, this is one thing that we do very well. When we start working with our clients, we not only let them know about the process, we start giving them the paperwork up ahead, and we're like, you're going to be getting this. This isn't the real one, but you're going to be getting this. Oh, and you're also going to be getting this. And this over here is the however many page purchase agreement, or this is what this looks like. And so we're doing this in stages so that when they get it, they're at least familiar with the size or the amount of paperwork they're going to have to go through. And that's how we break bigger tasks into smaller ones or easier steps. Now, let them make choices whenever possible. Sometimes this is a very delicate one, because sometimes they want you to give them the advice that they need, saying, Tristan, well, what do you think? And then if they ask me, I say, well, this is how I think, but do you think that benefits you from where you're at? And I think I'm giving the control back to them. And that's how I make them feel comfortable with choices. Yes, I tell them what I think, because that's what they hired me for as a professional, but I give it back to them to make that decision. And most people enjoy that, or at least love that. Explain things simply, like you're telling a story. If you can relate what's happening to a time that this happened to you or to a client without naming names, that becomes a lot better, because they feel like, got it, this is normal, which makes them feel like, okay, got it, I got control of this. If it happened before and this isn't something that's abnormal, I got it. Last one, ask what would help you feel better about this. And they'll tell you. They'll say, well, look, if they weren't asking for so much money back, or if they weren't asking for that specific thing, right? Ask them that question. It's pretty easy. What would help you feel better about this? Number 3, handle big feelings. When clients get upset, just go right into it. Remember, I put here for me to remember it's like a pot boiling over. Let it cool down. And that's why I like to give space sometimes. I say, hey, you know what? Let's talk in 2 hours. Let's talk in the morning. Just think it through. I don't say, hey, calm down and I'll call you in 2 hours. Chill out. That's the opposite of what you want to do. I think it through, noodle on it. Like my friend says, noodle on it. We'll talk in the morning. Is that okay? Right? Or we'll talk earlier. It could be tonight. Next, don't take it personally. And this is a tough one, because even though I have it written down here, it says don't take it personally. They're usually scared or worried. It's true, but I take it personally sometimes. It's hard not to. And I think the challenge is taking a step back and saying, look, it's their first time, their second time, they don't do it too often. Let's go through the feelings, right? Handle the big feelings, like number 3 says. Handle these big feelings. And give phrases like, I understand this sounds a little corny, but it works. I understand this is really important to you, and it is to me too. Here's how I suggest we go through with this, but you tell me, how does that sit with you? I typically do that. I give the advice and I say, well, how does that sit with you previous? Right? Go back to number 3 where it says, what would help you feel better about this? Or reminding them that I'm here for you. Here's my advice, but what do you think? And then give them time to calm down before making any big decisions. I usually, if they say, hey, let's cancel this, I say, great. I go through, tell me why. I just want to take some notes, right? And let's do this. If it's okay with you, only if it's okay with you, let's wait until the morning, and you may have some other things that you want to add, or maybe you change your mind. You always have to give them that opportunity, because people typically decide, like I said, with those 2 brains, the feeling brain and the thinking brain. And when things are going to hell, or they get really challenging because they're not used to these situations, they're on their thinking brain. They're on their feeling brain. And all they're doing is feeling, and they're bringing you into this whole mess. Number 4, build trust. Build trust like building a bridge. That's number 4. I said, always tell the truth even when it's hard. Doesn't mean you can't tell a story with it, which I love telling. Doesn't mean you can't say, hey, this, but this. Say, hey, look, this is the challenge right here, but these are the good things over in the long run. Or this is good, this is bad. I always try to do both together, just so that they understand that after we're done, these are the benefits. Before it looks like crap, here's what it's going to be. Let's just get right into it. Next, do what you say you'll do. A lot of the times we say certain things, we give bad timelines, and now we look bad, and then we lose that trust. Next, explain things twice if needed. In fact, I would encourage you to explain things before they happen. Meaning, let's go over the paperwork. Like, what does this all look like when you get it? So it's more familiar, going back to what we talked about earlier. And lastly, here I put share good news and not so good news. It's almost repetitive of that number 1 under 4, but just reminding you, sharing both is always good, and I like to do them together. Now, I put here as a reminder, all right? I said reminder. Just like helping a friend who's nervous about a big test, you want to stay calm yourself. Very important. Help them focus on one thing at a time. And that's probably a little bit more challenging to do because 30 days go by really quick and a lot of paperwork happens at the same time, but do your best one thing at a time. Remind them that it's okay to have feelings, kind of like when you're talking to kids. Hey, this is normal. And you're going to have some feelings that get very aggressive. And I just want to let you know that that's okay. I just want you to tell me and have the trust in me to say, hey, Tristan, I'm a little frustrated with this, or I'm a little angry, so we can talk it through. Next, show them you've got their back. I think that's the one thing they're looking for when they hire you, that not only are they confident that you get things done, but that you have their back, especially when things get very tough. Anyway, this is the list I have. I just wrote it out last night, so this one was a little bit longer. Thank you for tuning in. Have an awesome day.